The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to today's Titanium Team Training with your host, Warren Flax.
All right. Hello. Thank you, Andrea. I appreciate you setting this up, and we appreciate everything you do for us, just so you know that.
Thank you.
All right. So let's get going here. We are talking to you from our office in Yardley, Pennsylvania. I'm here with our fairly new outside sales agent, AJ Curcio, and we're going to talk about working with buyers on the road so that they buy faster, so that they're happier, so that they trust you more, so that you're getting referrals and you're getting testimonials, okay? I won't waste a lot of time, but just a brief story about myself. When I got started as a real estate agent, I basically I worked at a traditional real estate brokerage, pretty much did everything that the broker told me to do, and I was working with some clients, and I showed them 136 homes, and they didn't buy anything. And so I said to myself, I stink at this, right? I'm not going to lie and say that I absolved them 100% of blame. I certainly did some feeling sorry for myself and blaming of the client. But ultimately, I looked in the mirror and I said, I stink at working with buyers, because there's no way, number one, I can make a living like this, but number two, there's no way these people are happy. Whatever I did clearly didn't work for the client either. They had to rent when they really had wanted to buy and own their own home. And I, of course, wasn't real happy with this from a business standpoint. So I ran around the Craig Proctor system when I first joined it, seeking out all of the top buyer agents in the program. Whenever I heard anybody speaking on stage about buyers, I would stalk them in the hallways. I would take notes. I would go visit other people's offices and ask them about working with buyers. And so basically what I'm presenting to you here today is a compilation of a lot of years of a lot of expert buyer agents and what they do. I even met with one guy who only worked with buyers. His brokerage doesn't take listings. I think it's a terrible business model, but the point is clearly very good at working with buyers. So, all right, let's get going. The deal is this, somewhat obvious, but I'll make this point anyway. You're going to start out by signing the buyers up before working with them. If you're on one of these titanium sales teams, it's obviously been impressed upon you the importance of signing up your buyers before working with them. The opposite is the case in the industry. A significant number of agents, I don't know what the percentage is, but maybe 90+% of real estate agents are working with buyers that have never actually considered their choice of real estate agent from the standpoint of what services are going to be provided, what's it going to cost, what services are not going to be provided. So when you are thinking about, this, action of signing up buyers, understand that it's a big deal. It's a decision of how we work. And the choice to work with only signed buyers is a huge benefit to your clients, because you are honestly laying out for these folks what you're going to do for them, what you're not going to do for them, and how much it's going to cost. Think about the average real estate agent who just shows houses and then tries to get paid at the end of the deal. It's a very dishonest way of working. And in fact, whether they admit it or not, the ultimate majority of agents will make decisions of what homes they show based on whether the listing agent is taking care of them. It's like their children, essentially, in this industry, if you think about it. They expect the listing agent to be mommy and daddy and take care of all their basic needs. And we want you guys to be grown-ups so that you can take care of yourselves. And signing up buyers is the way that you're going to do it. All right? So just a real brief overview of signing up buyers. I'm not going to go through buyer presentation here. We don't have time for that. But where should you conduct buyer appointments? On our team, we studied this. All right. The options are you could go to your office. You could have the meeting at the buyer's home or apartment. In our marketplace, the majority of the buyers that we work with are local people. Now, if you're in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, I understand that's different. The majority of your buyers are coming from other parts of the United States and Canada. They are second home buyers, and you may need to do your presentations over the phone via webinars like this one, something like that. But in our market, we do have the option of going to the buyer's home. You could have it at some sort of a public place like Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. So we looked at all of that. Oh, and then the fourth option is just meet the buyer at the property that they call about. So you have four different options. We studied this. we tested it, and we determined that if we meet at our office or we meet at the buyer's home, our success rate is basically the same. We have a pretty good success rate with either one of those types of meetings. So that's fine. That tells us that whatever we have to do to make the meeting happen, we could choose between the office or the home. But what we found was if we meet at the public place like the Dunkin' Donuts or we meet at the property, our success rate was 0. We weren't closing any deals from those meetings. So it's not just a matter of signing people up, it's a matter of closing them. And we found that those weren't happening. And personally, I believe the reason for that is it's a less qualified appointment. I think it's just a buyer who's not really serious because they're not even willing to let us into their home or come to our office. But the why is irrelevant in this case. The matter is we did the testing and that's the result. So you just need to test and decide for yourselves. Obviously, we would always use, Craig Proctor's buyer presentation. That's going to be the structure of the meeting. And we're always going to use the demonstration of value package as well. And for those of you that don't have that, it's in the Platinum website, on the coaching website. It's ID number 997. Okay. And then on the meeting, when we sign them up, we're going to get the buyers on the phone with our lender. That's the part, that's one of the services that we tell them we're going to provide for them. Even if they've gotten pre-approved themselves, we're still going to get them on the phone with our lender. And I love the language Jim Botrell taught me a while back. You say to the buyer, hey, listen, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, are you only going to look at one house or are you going to look at multiple houses throughout this process as you consider where you're going to live? Well, you're also shopping for a mortgage, just like you're shopping for a home. So it's great that you already talked to one lender or two lenders, but are you only going to talk to one or two lenders throughout this whole process? I really think you should shop that as well. So there's a lender that a lot of our clients really like, that our clients recommend, and you should probably talk to them as well. And we really leverage the fact that our clients recommend this lender. I don't call it my lender. I don't own this other mortgage company. I wish I did. But I like having a third party that we know does a great job, that we know and trust, getting a look at this buyer's finances as well. All right. And then one quick point, something that, I made the mistake of early in my career. Someone would say to me, oh, Warren, you know what? Never mind. We're just going to rent. And I would just throw the lead in the garbage. That's pretty short-sighted, right? I mean, I was just marking them as dead and forgetting about them. Listen, when you rent, you're only 6 months away from being out searching for homes again, and we can even get them buying sooner by getting them seller assist and offering to have the seller of the home that they buy pay to break their lease. That language really helps with motivated buyers. So never throw out a renter, just mark them for future follow-up. All right, so we have this signed client, all right? And the way I look at it is we want to be in the business of giving folks great advice so that they are armed to make a great decision, all right? I never tell anybody what house to buy, but I want to give them a framework so that they can think for themselves that they are moving forward with this process. And the way I look at it is I come from a consulting background, so maybe that's why I think this way. But, the best advisors in any business are experts at pre-framing, and that's a word I'll use a lot today. It shows a level of expertise beyond just answering questions. Okay, they don't even know what questions to ask. Many, many times, we say to ourselves, I'm so glad I listened to that group consult or that training session where there was Q&A, because other people asked questions that I never thought of. That's how all of us learn, right? But especially when we're new to something, we don't even know what we don't know, all right? And that's where your clients are, whether they're first-time buyers or whether this is their 4th house, okay? You sold 4 houses last month, right? They've done it 4 times in their whole life. So don't ever be intimidated by a buyer who acts like they know everything. They don't, right? You do this for a living. They don't. Certainly your team leader can guide you if you ever have issues, but I'm not intimidated by doctors, lawyers, CEOs. Don't be. They need what you have. I understand because if they're in a higher price point, they may have a lot of agents chasing them, which gives them confidence, but that doesn't mean that they actually know what's going on. All right. So we've seen this over the years. If you work with both buyers and sellers, I'm sure you can relate to what I'm talking about here. When I'm a listing agent, many times I'll deal with a buyer agent who sort of interferes with their buyer's process. And I don't mean that from a negotiation standpoint that they're working hard for their client. I mean the agent will literally interfere. They'll say things, that just boggle my mind. Like, I'll never let my buyer pay that. I'll never let my buyer buy that. That's not in any way good, representation. All right. So there's three problems when a weak agent starts making decisions for their clients. All right. First of all, they cost you a client because the agent's decision isn't always the best one, and it's not the one that the client wanted. So this can literally get you fired. It's happened to me, and deservedly so. All right. Second, it'll cost us time because uneducated clients require more hand-holding. Sorry, I'm just going to take a couple of drinks here. All right. And then third, it costs us business because, look, I'm not always right, and I could blow up deals. And again, there's always that famous line, I would never let my client pay X for that house. By the way, I did that once, so I'm not throwing stones from my glass house. I learned the hard way that that's a terrible way to represent a client. I once had a client who bought a home, and then I had another client who wanted to buy a home on the same street. So in my head, I was thinking, and it was the same street within a 6-month period of time. So I was thinking to myself, well, what the first client paid is clearly market value for that street. And then the list price on the second home was higher. So I insisted that my client bring in an offer below asking price because, Warren knew what this house was really worth. Well, somebody else paid more and somebody else got that house. I cost my client that house because of my ego. And that's a common theme among the stupid things that I do, as you'll hear, is I put my ego before my clients. So we have to learn from that and recognize, all right, we don't want to think that way. Let them buy the house. Okay, that's what they want. Craig teaches us our job when we represent buyers is to get them the house. All right, not get them the house at the price Warren thinks is best, not get them the house with the terms Warren think are best, but get them the house, because that's what the client wants. All right. So my job is to help them get the house. And in terms of how we do it, every situation is going to be different. But there's 7 steps to success that we're going to go through here. First is qualifying your buyer. Second is pre-framing the process. Finding them homes to see is third. Fourth, pre-frame the showings. Fifth is transition them from liking a house to making an offer. 6 is making the strongest possible offer. And then 7th is the negotiation. All right. So first, qualifying your buyer. All right. Are you working with a motivated buyer who can buy today if they see a property they like? All right. So remember the steps in the VIP buyer system. All right. We book an appointment with a buyer. All right. We don't do any financial qualification before the meeting unless the buyer brought it up. Right, let's face it, if I'm speaking to a buyer prospect and I'm booking the appointment and they say, oh, by the way, I just had a bankruptcy last year. All right, they brought it up. It's obvious that this is an issue. Maybe they've been turned down before. So, okay, I'll get them in touch with my lender right then and there. But I'm going to assume the best because no matter what, anyone can buy a home. It's just a matter of when. All right, so every other agent out there is rejecting them on the phone, telling them, come back to me when you're ready. Well, there's a million agents out there, right? Literally 1.4 million agents in the United States alone. I don't even know the count in Canada. So if I'm a consumer, the last thing I'm going to do is go back to the guy who was mean to me last year, all right, who rejected me last year. And whether you think you're being mean or not, nobody likes rejection, all right? So it's just not likely that they're going to come back to me a year from now if I don't do anything for them, all right? So our system is designed to provide the service, give before we get. So we give them the meeting. We give them the education of the meeting. We sign them up as our client. Now we have a fiduciary duty to these folks, and we get them in touch with our lender. If my lender says to me, hey, Warren, these guys are 6 months away. They should be good to go. There's just a checklist of things they have to do. That's perfectly fine. I talk to the buyer, and we set up a plan. The lender actually sets up the plan. I'm not going to show houses to a buyer who's not financially qualified. I'm not asking anybody on this webinar to show houses to an unqualified buyer today. sign them up, get their loyalty, and then put them in a follow-up plan. You have a million times better chance of converting them if you sign them up next year when they're ready to buy than if you kick them to the curb. All right. So am I working with a motivated buyer? All right. And can they buy today? That's step one. Step two, look, it's not the client's job to understand how things work. So if they can't make an offer today, I've got to educate them about why we're not going to do it. And it's simple. Hey, so we end the buyer consult. We get the lender on the phone. We pick the houses that the buyer is going to look at Thursday night. All right. And we book the appointment for showings. Maybe the buyer doesn't know all the homes they want to see. That's fine. They can add a few, but I don't let them leave our meeting, or I don't leave their home without getting an appointment for showings. So if I sign them up on Monday, we're going to look at homes maybe Thursday or Friday. All right. Only going to be 36 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, something like that. You want to keep the momentum going, get them out. All right. So, but if I book the appointment for showings, in this example, I signed them up Monday, we're going to look at homes Thursday. Tuesday, the lender speaks with these buyers, and the lender calls me and says, these guys are a little shaky, Warren. I think they could buy in maybe 6 to 9 months. I'm going to call the buyer back. Hey, I talked to Bill, or I talked to Dawn over at the mortgage company. She says that you guys are pretty good to go, but not quite there yet. So no sense in us looking at houses Thursday night. It's too soon for that. But if you guys work with Bill or Dawn, you're going to be pretty good in just a couple of months. Okay. So I can back out of the appointment, but you have to have an appointment first. Hope that makes sense. Okay. I'm not going to worry about pre-approval until after they're signed up. We just talked about that. Step two, pre-frame the entire process. Okay. So you're going to do the buyer presentation. You're going to use the demonstration of value materials to build trust. You're going to share any specific information. So in my area, Pennsylvania and New Jersey, these two states operate in very different ways. So we're going to educate this buyer about the specific state in which they are buying. And then the last thing we do at the meeting is the what to do and say when you come across homes on your own. And I'm going to give them a stack of business cards. So at the end of the buyer presentation, as you know, there's a slide that says what to do and say when you come across homes on your own. And this slide basically outlines for the buyer, here's what you do if you go to an open house. All right, you give them my business card and you sign my name in on the sign-in sheet. That way I'm the one that the agent bothers, not you, after the showing is over, after you look at the house for feedback. If you come across any new construction, you need to call me. You can't just walk into new construction by yourself, or else they will deny you representation if you choose to buy the home. All right, that's the wording that we use. That's what's in it for me, WIFM, for the prospect. All right, you don't want to be denied representation. All right, same thing with a for sale by owner. You come across a for sale by owner sign or something online, that's great. We love working with those guys. Just get me the phone number. If you have any other information about the house, like the address, that's great, but I don't even need it. I just need the phone number of the seller and I'll call them for you. Don't call them directly yourself. It really muddies the waters. If you just train your clients up front, trust me, they will do what you say because they're looking for this kind of advice. But if you don't educate them, we can't be upset if things go sideways because they don't know. All right. So as soon as they sign up, we schedule the first showings. We mentioned that. We get the pre-approval, the proof of funds if they're buying with cash. All right. We're going to have them viewing homes on Thursday night. All right. Now, I'm going to educate the buyer that the National Association of Realtors does surveys, and they've determined that the average buyer walks into 8 homes before they buy one. Okay, so I'm always going to share this statistic with my buyers, ideally at the end of the initial meeting, but if not, then maybe the first time we do showings. But it's really important that I get this data into their head because they have no idea. They may be thinking we need to look at 50 homes. They may be thinking 136. They may be thinking, I don't know what they're thinking, but I know this, they're not going to give themselves permission to pull the trigger and make an offer if they're not comfortable with the fact that they've overturned every rock, right? And looked in every nook and cranny to make sure that they've found the best possible home for themselves. Okay. So when I explain this to them, I let them know, look, you guys are obviously, you're going to look at hundreds of homes online, right? and you're going to even drive by the best homes. So you're going to see, dozens of homes in person. And then our time is best going to be spent together going into the best homes. Okay. So I'm not telling you you're only allowed to look at 8 homes with me. That would be ludicrous. I'm just letting you know the average is 8. So you guys may fall in love with the very first home we walk into. That is normal. That happens a lot. And you should not feel weird about that. We can go write an offer and get you guys the very first home you look into if it's the right one. This process is about you. It's not about everybody else. All right. So we let them know, listen, when you're looking at homes online, whether it's stuff I send you, whether you find it yourself, you want to drive by your favorites. I'm sure you've experienced, guys, just in your own research, homes look really, really good on the internet, don't they? I mean, these agents are really good at getting well-lit photos and really making everything look great. So you want to drive by the best ones. And then I need some notice to book appointments because a lot of showings require 24 hours notice. So give me 36 hours notice before you want to see anything. Okay. And last is who's going to be looking at homes. I need all the decision makers to be there all the time. Okay. None of this stuff where the wife's a big corporate executive and she flies around the country. So the husband's going to look at all the houses and she's just going to come in, and look at the best home. That's a disaster. And I let them know, here's why that's not going to work. So first of all, our buyer meeting, obviously, they're both together. And I'm letting them know, here's why that's not going to work. Because nobody gets everything they want when they buy a house. Okay? So this process is a process of elimination. It's about making sacrifices. Do we want more size or do we want to pay more money? Or, are we willing to take less size in order to save money? Are we going to, go in this side of town or that side of town? There's all sorts of sacrifices that need to be made. So the sacrifices are part of the elimination process. So all the decision makers must be present, including if somebody's lending you money for the down payment, or you always make decisions with your parents or your children, whatever it is, whoever's important in this process, they all need to be coming and looking at the homes. From an agent standpoint, the reason this benefits you so much is the decision makers feel valued by you if you want to include them in the process. And if you demand that they be there and they don't show up, they forfeit the right later on to try to blow things up because they didn't come. So you're giving the clients permission to tell everybody in their life to shut up if the other people in their life aren't willing to come along. All right. So this is all about WIFM. I'm educating the client on how this benefits them. All right. Step 3 of this process is finding them homes. Okay. It's been hammered into us in this program, and I'll say it again. It is not the client's job to call you. I know I'm going to email them homes. I know some people are proactive, and those proactive clients are going to tell me, all right, Warren, we want to go out Thursday and we want to look at these. Great. I love those clients. Those are called lay downs. You don't get paid for closing lay downs. You get paid for selling homes to the average person. Okay. So don't expect them to be picking up the phone and calling you. Your job every week, you exist to find them a home. Okay. So the top agents are proactive, not reactive. All right. So every week needs to be on your calendar, an hour or so blocked out on your calendar to proactively be seeking off-market properties for your buyers. If you can do it more frequently than once a week, great. It depends on how fast your market moves. All right. My market, average days on market right now is over 90. So once a week is sufficient given where the market is. But if I was in a white hot market like Toronto or in California right now, I'd be doing this every day for the signed buyers that I have. Just get them something, get them going. MLS, for sale by owner, Zillow, coming soon listings, expired listings, our database of seller prospects and buyers with homes to sell. All of these are sources of homes that are not active on the MLS. I know I mentioned MLS first, but everything else here is not in MLS. All right. So I find them homes and I get them out. It's not just about sending them homes by email. I'm going to call them up and say, hey, John and Sue, I've got 3 homes I need you to see on Saturday. Are you guys available at 10 a.m.? I don't know, Warren. We're really busy. Can you just email them over? No. These homes are not on the MLS. They're going to be gone. I need you guys to just trust me. We got to get out there and look at them. This is the way homes get sold. Even if they don't like the 3 homes you pick, they appreciate that you found them something nobody else can find. They're not going to hold this against you. All right. And the phone conversations are about getting out and looking at property, not email. Not, hey, did you get my email? What'd you think of the email? Did you see anything you like? That's lame. All right? Get them out. It's a short conversation. It's, hey, let's go. When are you guys ready to go? All right, let's go. I've got some homes for you to see. If there's anything you like as well, let me know. All right, step 4, pre-frame the showings, okay? So, well, just real quick, what do you do with the buyer that wants to view 18 homes? All right, obviously our philosophy is when in doubt, throw it out. So I'm going to manage Mr. High C with his spreadsheets, because I've worked with plenty of those, trust me, by simply making the point to them that, look, nobody buys their 18th favorite home. All right, so let's prioritize these. Let's see what's available, and let's try to get you out there and see the best ones, and we'll keep the other ones in reserve. Also, any more than 6 homes at a time is too many. They can't remember them. Their mind gets jumbled. So I'll insist that they give me their top 4 to 6 homes, and then, as we know, they're not all even going to be available. So, you know, maybe we'll end up viewing 4 to 6 at most. Okay, so at the property, I'm going to pre-frame this whole process for them before we walk into the first home. And this is important because once they walk into a home, they are distracted. So I'm going to let them know outside, even if it's cold in Philadelphia in January, I'm still going to stand out there and do my little speech, because I've known it saves us so much time. And every home I don't have to go into, it's even warmer in my car, right? So I let them know, listen, each showing is about 10 minutes. So the homes that we sell range anywhere from maybe 1,000, 1,500 square feet up to about 3,000, 3,500 square feet. If you're showing 6,000 square foot homes, obviously your clients are going to need more time, and they're probably going to be looking at less homes. But if you're showing the typical, you know, American Canadian property, 10 minutes is more than enough to walk through a property. So we let them know the purpose of the showing is for you to focus on the basics and just see what you feel. We'll probably circle back to the best home anyway. So don't feel like you guys need to inspect every nook and cranny. All right. Listen, I know you guys were supposed to, I gave you homework to drive by the best homes, but in case you didn't have time for that, that's okay. You don't have to go inside. If you pull up to a house or I pull up to a house and you don't like the outside, just let me know. We don't have to go in. These showings are for you. They're not for the seller. It's designed for you guys to narrow this process down and focus in on the very best home. All right. I'll cancel the showing. Don't worry about that. Okay. Listen, if we go into a house and you don't like the downstairs, just let me know. We can turn around and leave. Same thing. We don't have to go upstairs. There's no law that says we have to inspect every single room in the house. These are for you. And once you know, if you don't like the outside, you're not buying the house, right? If you don't like the downstairs, it doesn't matter what's upstairs. You're not buying it. So we can figure that out pretty quickly. Okay. All right. So when we go inside a house, I'm going to open the door for you and make sure there's nothing scary popping out at us. And then I'm going to let you guys in, and you can walk through the house at your pace. I'm not going to, quote, show you the house. All right. I'm not Vanna White. I think you know which one's a kitchen and which room's a bathroom. So I'm just going to sort of trail along with you as you walk through the house. All right. But what I ask of you when we're going through the house is, please, if there's 2 of them or more, I need you to speak up. Don't whisper to each other, because I want to hear what's important to you and what you like about the house. And if they speak another language that I don't speak, I need you to speak in English, or I speak Spanish. That's fine. But if you're speaking Urdu or you're speaking Mandarin, I need you to speak in English when you're talking to each other, because I need to know what's important to you. All right. So communication is key. And I know most of us men, we're not very good listeners, but I'm really going to try my best, you know, to listen hard here. So please help me out. All right. They laugh at that. Okay. So when we finish with the first house, or maybe before the first house, depending on the pace, I'll let them know. All right, here's what I'm going to do. Okay, guys, once you've seen 2 homes, I need you to force rank them. All right, I need you to tell me which of these homes you like best. And you can't cheat. You can't tell me you like the kitchen from house 1 and you like the yard from house 2. Like, we all have that. But we have to choose, okay, because we're not going to be picking up this kitchen and putting it with that yard. So after the first 2 homes, I need you to tell me which one is better. And then every new home we go to, we're going to compare the new home with the best home. And this way, things are going to stay real clear for you guys as we move forward. All right? Because the worst thing would be if you just look at 6 houses and then go back home and try to decide, because they all get jumbled in our heads. Okay? All right. And then listen, finally, you don't have to look at all of the homes. So if we booked 6 homes for today, again, these showings are for you guys. So if you like house 3, we don't have to go to any more. You just tell me, hey, Warren, we think this is the one, and we can focus all of our energy and effort into house number 3. Okay? All right, a few more tips for you as an agent. If for some reason you're in a situation where one of the seller or one of the buyers isn't available, you should still make an offer, even with just one signature. Better to get your client's offer into the mix with the listing agent as quickly as possible. You could always get signatures and add another name some other time. All right. You should keep blank copies of paperwork in your car. I know we all use DocuSign. I know we all use tablets and laptops and smartphones and all the rest, but there is no excuse for a deal not to get done because of failing technology. Have backups. I keep in my car Pennsylvania purchase contracts, New Jersey purchase contracts, Pennsylvania listing contracts, New Jersey listing contracts. Again, I don't want to hear you could have gotten a listing, but then you didn't have the paperwork, so you came back to the office and they changed their mind, right? So always be prepared and have that stuff. As we mentioned, it's not the client's job to call us, so we're proactively getting them out the door. And with anything, when you're putting deals together, there's an urgency to this. So never wait until tomorrow, all right? If they're working on something, they're thinking about making the offer, it should never wait because of me. If the client wants to wait, obviously I can't force them, but if they're ready to do something, I've got to tie it down and get it done tonight, okay? All right, so what do you do with the buyer who's not finding what they want? All right, I hear this from agents a lot. The agent will tell me, Warren, I've got these motivated buyers. They're just, there's just no homes for them, okay? I have to find them a home. All right, well, that's typically not the case. Typically the case is there are homes for sale. It's that this buyer's expectations are not in line with the reality of the market. And really, if you think about it, there's no difference between that buyer and an overpriced listing. The home isn't the problem, it's the price that's the problem with an overpriced listing. The buyer is the problem in this case because their expectations are out of line with the market. So my job is to manage that, the expectations, not the market. Okay, when an agent says to me, I just have to find them a home, I know the agent doesn't know what they're doing, all right? You can't change the homes that are on the market. And by the way, tomorrow is not going to change, okay? If you're waiting for the magic house to show up, you're going to be waiting till you're dead because in this price range where this buyer is buying, they're seeing what's out there and it's never going to change. So what we do is we call the buyer up, we say, okay, John and Susie, this is not going well. Let's sit down and let's talk face to face and let's figure this thing out. They will come every time except for one situation. There's one example where they will not come, and that is where they actually are not motivated to get a house. So I call them up. I say, look, guys, we've been out a couple times. You're not seeing what you want. Let's sit down and go over everything because I don't feel like I'm doing a good enough job for you. 95% of buyers are going to say, yeah, let's do that. They appreciate that I care, and they were close to firing me anyway, whether you think so or not. So because their family and friends are telling them it's your fault, just so you know. But the one example where they won't blame me is where they'll say, no, actually, Warren, it's not you, it's us. We're just not ready for this. We're not going to do this. We get it. We see what's out there. We're just going to rent for another year. I don't like that, but that's the way it is. Fine. We'll talk through it. If they choose to rent, at least I'm not out showing them more houses. Okay. So they sit down and I say, all right, guys, let's take this from the top. Let's pretend that we're just starting from scratch. I listened to you when we first met about what you wanted in a house, but let's just start over and make no assumptions. All right. And so I draw this pentagon because we're going to have 5 different sections of the pentagon. So first is size. You told me when we started this process that you needed a 4-bedroom home. Is that still the case? Now they'll either say yes or no. Either yes, we really need a 4-bedroom home, Warren, that's the whole reason we're moving. The other home was 3 bedrooms. Or they'll say, no, actually we talked about it and we could get away with less. Whatever the answer is, it's fine. We just want to ask the question. We're putting them in a position of making decisions, okay? The second is location. You told me you needed to be in Council Rock School District. Is that still the case? They say yes or they say no. Whatever it is, we just keep moving forward. But I'm giving them options as I move through the pentagon. Third is condition. You told me you guys needed a move-in ready home. Is there any flexibility there? Sometimes in our market, there are fixer-uppers that show up and you might be able to get a deal on one of those. It's not often though. I manage that expectation. Fourth is property type. You were only looking at single-family detached homes. Do you have any interest in maybe a townhome or a condo? Because that would change the search dramatically. Again, I'm making it clear to them that I listened to them in the beginning. I understood what they wanted, but I'm giving them other options. And finally is price. And this is where we're going to talk about monthly payment. Never talk in gross sales price at this stage, because it's the monthly payment that's impacting, obviously not a cash buyer, but any mortgage buyer, it's the monthly payment that's impacting their comfort level. So you guys told me you were only comfortable up to $2,000 a month. Had you considered any other numbers? Because just so you know, every $200 a month raises your purchasing power by $50,000 in this market, in this area, with our taxes and the current interest rates. So what about $2,200 a month? Is that something you guys would be comfortable doing, or is that off the table? And we'll just see where that goes. That alone can solve it. Okay, so we're pretty close to the end here. I'm going to go real quick through these last parts. We do more of this in our live training, OSA workshops that we do, which I'll put a plug in for. We'll do them throughout the year here in Philadelphia. So 5 is transition them from liking the house to making an offer. All right. If they're running around the house and the kids are picking out their rooms, that's a pretty good sign, right? Unless they're like my kids who run around every house. But you know, the language that we use is, hey, it sounds like you like this one. Why don't we go back to the office and explore it in more depth? Okay. Notice what I don't say. Hey, why don't we go sign some scary paperwork? All right. Obviously, we want to transition them smoothly through this process. You're the expert. You need to walk them through this in a way that they're comfortable. So I like this language. Why don't we go back to the office and explore it in more depth? Okay. So we're going to get the listing agent on the phone, and we're going to ask the listing agent some questions. Now, what I'd like to do in a perfect world is have the listing agent answer the phone. But if the agent does not answer the phone, understand it's still a best practice to call them on speakerphone from the property, because this way the buyer sees that the listing agent is non-responsive. If you end up doing this transaction and you're having trouble with the listing agent in the future, the buyer will remember that at the property, the agent did not answer the phone. And they'll give you a break when you say, look, I'm calling Rick, but he's just not picking up. All right. So I let the agent know when I do get them on the phone. Maybe they call me back, or maybe they answer the live call. Hey, I'm here with my buyers. We're at your listing at 123 Main Street. Is it still available? Right. We don't want to waste our time writing an offer if the house is not available. If I could get you an offer within the next 2 hours, how soon could you present it? Are there any other offers on it? If they say yes, how does it look? The buyer's hearing all of these answers. So suddenly all this information that you guys have always provided to your buyer clients, but the problem is you were the bad guy. You were delivering the bad information. All right. I'm getting the listing agent to give the news, whether it's good or bad. If it's bad news, at least they're hearing it from the other agent. You know, oh yeah, there's 9 offers. How's it look? Yeah, they're great. Way over asking price. All right. Well, obviously your buyer knows that now, versus if they say, I don't know, we've got nothing, then we'd love anything. Okay. So I'm on the phone with the listing agent. We're at the property. Logistical stuff. We get the seller's property disclosure. We need that sent over to us. Okay. Hey, Mr. Listing Agent, how's the seller's flexibility with the asking price? You'd be amazed what can come of this. But even if the listing agent doesn't give you any good information there, the buyer appreciates that you tried. Now, when you're writing the offer, you can let them know, hey, look, you heard the listing agent. I mean, it doesn't sound like we're going to get much flexibility here. Of all the homes that you looked at, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, would you agree this is the best one? They say yes. Okay, then. So by definition, this home is a good deal at the asking price because it's the best one in the price range. So don't waste time trying to get it for less when we already have the best deal. And I'm saying that to you as an agent, but that's also how I would word it to the client. Okay. A few other things I'd ask the listing agent: what settlement date would the seller ideally like? Any terms and conditions that I can figure out to make the offer stronger. We're just going to ask the listing agent to basically write the offer for us. Inclusions and exclusions. All right. Anything else that's important to the seller that my buyer should know. Okay. And then I turn to the buyers. Do you guys have any other questions that I forgot to ask? Usually they have some logistical question, is the garage, over here? Where's the remote? Who knows? But the point is they want to ask their own questions. That's fine. We get that answered. Usually the listing agent has no idea, right? Because the buyer wants to ask something that only the seller knows. Okay, so making the strongest possible offer. Our job, as we mentioned earlier, get them the house, okay? My job as an agent, when things get tense, is to save the client, not the deal. That's one of our philosophies in my company. Save the client, not the deal. So if things start to go sideways, I'm going to position things where basically so here's what I mean. Let's say the buyer wants to make a request that I personally think is unreasonable. When I was a new agent, I would try to argue with my client and talk them out of it. But what I've learned is that's not really representing them to the best. I don't think I'm a walkover, by any stretch, but I think it's better to make the seller the bad guy, because I've learned in many cases the seller will acquiesce to a request that I think is ridiculous. So better just to put it in writing and send it over and let the seller be the one who rejects whatever they're requesting. I find that the client appreciates that more. It's like I'm fighting for them. If you're in a multiple offer situation, as many of you are these days, sell yourself and your team as well as the offer price. Sell your buyer, yourself, and your team. You should have a package of materials talking about how successful your team is at closing deals, because listing agents will push for the deal that they're most confident will close. Make things easy for the listing agent. Do their job if necessary, okay? And then strengthen the offer by waiving terms and conditions. Of course, I think most of you are familiar with buyer love letters and escalation clauses. And pre-frame the possible seller responses to your buyer. So Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, they could accept your offer, they could reject your offer, or they could counter your offer. We'll see what comes of it. And I believe you should put all counter offers in writing. It's stronger, and you don't have to worry as much about the listing agent maybe forgetting one or two things, okay? And just real quickly, a couple of points about negotiations. Be humble and sell yourself and your team. Don't put the other agent down. Don't research how many deals the other agent has done and insult them and say, you're an idiot, you only sold 3 houses last year. I did that once. It doesn't work very well. Counter with uneven numbers. If you're in a back and forth negotiation, what I find really works well is if I use uneven numbers. So, here's what I am, Mr. Listing Agent, the buyer and the lender, we all spoke, and the buyer can do 437.5. That seems to finalize a negotiation as opposed to constantly using round numbers. And certainly never call anything final. When you're in negotiation, you never know what else could be done. Even if the client screams at me, I'm not going up another penny, I'm still never going to call anything final when I'm negotiating on their behalf. Expand the pie. Agents do this pretty well, but just look at other things besides price that you can negotiate. Terms, conditions, timing is always a big deal. Use language where it's the buyer this, the seller that, never I or my company. It depersonalizes it, makes it a lot easier for you and the other agent to get along. And we have a document in Pennsylvania that's a reply to offer document that really ensures that the offer was presented. So we'll use that from time to time if we think the offer is not being presented. And never tell your clients it's a done deal until you have it all signed, sealed, and delivered, because there's no such thing as an oral contract, all right? And finally, don't go to bed without updating your client. If the deal is shut down for the night because the other agent tells you, all right, the seller's going to think about it, circle back to your buyer and let them know we're not going to hear anything till the morning, okay? And again, don't forget to value third parties. If they listen to their parents and their parents are coming to the home inspection, make sure you respect that. Really, really kiss the parent's butt when you're at the inspection. I find they'll go along with you a lot easier. And then finally, if the deal gets accepted, let the buyer know what buyer remorse is and let them know it's common, it's normal, and you guys have made a great decision. You've done a lot of work here. So, don't pull the plug on something tomorrow just because you got cold feet tonight. That's very, very normal. All right. So I think with all these tools, if you guys go back and listen to this again, you'll be able to really close your buyers faster. Our best agents on my team are getting buyers to buy with one showing on average, one group of showings on one day. And it's because they're following all of these tips. So I recommend you do the same. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Warren. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a wonderful day ahead. This officially ends the webinar for today.